Okay, hey everybody, I'm Barth. I work at Valve. I work on SteamVR. I wanted to show you guys how cool SteamVR is, and I thought the best way to do that would be to make a game right now in the next 17 minutes. This was a terrible idea. So we're going to use the Vive, we're going to use Unity, we're going to use SteamVR. We could have used Unreal, but we're not right now. We could have also written an engine from scratch, but we definitely don't have time for that. We're also going to explore some common problems and solve them along the way so you can learn something. So let's get started. So one of the first problems that people tend to run into with VR is that every headset is basically its own platform. And I used to make indie games before I was at Valve, and supporting platforms is one of the worst parts of the job. So turns out we've solved that for you. So if you use SteamVR and build your game against that, we do all the integration work so you don't have to. So here's a little chart for engineers. So we're going to build a game in Unity. It's going to use the SteamVR plugin, which is a freely available Unity plugin that is built on top of the OpenVR APIs. And then underneath that, we at Valve rate the drivers for the Vive, the Rift, headsets of the future, who knows. So we do that work so you don't have to. So let's open up Unity really quick. Does anybody here use Unity? Heard of that before? Yeah. Okay, so we are going to start by nuking this scene, and we're going to go to SteamVR. I don't have internet here, so I already downloaded all of this, but all we need to do is drop out. You have your headset? You put your headset on now. It's time for the future, man. He's in the future! So this is pretty par for the course for most Unity plugins and stuff, but that's pretty easy. I want to show you something really quickly. So this is the sort of the head of the plugin. Notice you'll see tracking. If I don't click that button, you'll see tracking space. And under this, you can choose between a seated game, a standing game. One of the cool things about SteamVR is that it is written to enable you to make standing space games. So obviously the Vive has room scale, so you can create games that take place over a large area. But this even works with something like even a DK2. You could make a standing game. Before anybody uses SteamVR, we have built a calibration of their space. So all that data is already there. You don't have to calibrate. It's all ready to go. So we're going to flip back to here. Another common problem is, this is kind of an obvious one, is that you can't use traditional PC game controls in a virtual reality game. It will make people motion sick. And one of the ways that we've found to solve this is to really embrace the ability to create room scale experiences. So, even if you're not using the Vive, even if you just want to target a small space standing game that'll run on anything that's out there, embracing these sort of room scale design principles turns out is a great way to solve a lot of these problems. Letting player move in a one-to-one in the real world, it really eliminates nausea and enhances a sense of presence, which is a buzzword you'll hear people talk about, which is where it feels like you're actually in a virtual place, which is really the big thing that's cool about VR. If making a game that's constrained to a small space, like what he's doing, if that's too limiting, you can also make bigger games. If anybody's seen The Gallery, that's a game that allows you to explore a large space by sort of teleporting from area to area. So you can inspect something in your own space, but you can teleport instantly to move around a big game world. So we are going to go back to Unity. So I'm going to cheat a little bit, and we're just going to drop in an environment. Ta-da! Yeah. So all I notice is that we've positioned our camera rig. This establishes sort of the tracking space where we're going to move around. So we'll do the smallest one. This is sort of our minimum baseline for a room scale experience using the Vive. We've positioned it on a platform in the world. And then if we just, do I have to do anything else? Yeah, we just kind of play. And now, so one thing to say is that it looks a lot more impressive inside Colin's head right now. It doesn't, that's sort of one of the limitations of showing people VR stuff, is that this just looks like a game, but he's in another world right now. Is it amazing? It's amazing. Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to stop it now, Colin. So the other thing that's really cool is that, yeah, like this what we have right here will work with a CV1. It'll work with touch controllers. I've never even seen one, but it's going to work with it. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so we're going to advance. Another common problem, and something you hear people who haven't actually gotten a lot of time to develop VR games be worried about, is that there are like no buttons on these controllers. Like I have a 104 key button in front of me right here, or a 104 key keyboard. There are not 104 keys on that thing that he's holding. So a solution to this is to map your game's controls into the player's virtual environment. So tracked controllers are incredible because they make it so that you can create intuitive spatial interactions where you reach out and maybe pull a lever to do something in the game. You can, hide less often used controls in a contextual place that if something isn't used that often, maybe you push it off into the corner where it's used less often. So here's two examples. The left one is I can maybe start on the right. So in Fantastic Contraption, yay! You access all of the tools through a farting cat palette that you can drag around with you or follow you around, and you just kind of pull the pieces off of it. It's super intuitive. On the left is a height controller from a little prototype that somebody built in our office, where you kind of reach out with your controller and grab it, and then it locks it and becomes your controller, and then you can push the touchpad and make something go up and down. And it's on a little cable that's like using a rope simulation, so you can kind of wiggle it around. It's really fun. It takes something that's super mundane. On a PC game, maybe you'd map this to like 2 keys. Like, this is way more discoverable and fun. We'll fix that in a second. So it turns out this is a hard place to set up a VR demo. If having things glued to your hands is too limiting, that's the wrong stage. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to go back to here. Got ahead of myself for a second. So inside this camera rig you should try turning the controller off and on again. Here, let me. It's developer hardware. So underneath this player's, the camera rig, you'll see objects for the controllers. These are tracked automatically. So what we are going to make is a game. Has anybody played Fruit Ninja? You familiar with that? So we're going to do a wholesale ripoff of Fruit Ninja, except you have a sword and a gun in one. So we're going to take this gun sword, and we're going to put it in Colin's hand, and just by dragging into the controller, we're going to turn off the default controller models. And let's see if this works. Holy crap. So it's tracked 1-to-1. Does it feel real, Colin? Yeah. It's so real. Yeah. Yep. And that's super easy to do. You can get the button state with all of that. We have time. We can dig into the code for a second. Yeah. Code. Yeah. So we go in and we grab the track device. One of the cool things about SteamVR and OpenVR, which are basically the same thing, is that we support like lots of futuristic devices. You can have up to like 16 track devices. So in the future, when there's maybe like 4 controllers or a controller for your dog, that's a shout out to the hover junkers guys. But it'll support that. And then we just check the state of the controllers, and that's just whatever code. Okay, code. So let's go back to here. Doop. Okay. Another common problem is that people have this instinct to just kind of slap a head or a headset onto your head, or a HUD. That's a difficult word to say. And that's super distracting in VR. Having something kind of glued to your face, it's like having like a stain on your glasses that you can never get rid of. And it turns out people don't like that. But holy yeah! I couldn't have planned for that. Poor Colin. Yeah. Yes, as we can see, we've demonstrated, when you blue screen in the Matrix, you do not die. Colin is now haunted, though, so sorry, Colin. You might as well switch back. We can watch Windows start up. Yay. Yeah. Oh no, there's updates. Group security policies are very important, you know. Anybody have any questions?
Is that me being switched on? All right. Hi, I have some questions.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jack. I'm with BR Studios.
Okay.
I have some questions about the hardware. I saw you selected the rectangular play area.
Yes.
Are those choices built into SteamVR? Are they a limitation of the hardware? Is that something that you can set up, you can customize,
Yeah.
say, I want 210 by 150 instead of those defaults?
Let me restart. This might just turn into an old-fashioned talk. So what you saw of the three distinct options is actually a little bit of an older aspect. We've sort of gone away from that recently. And so when a user sets up their Vive or whatever else room scale hardware, they will map out their physical space. We did that up on the stage before this talk. And then they'll specify what their play area is. And this is the area in which a VR game takes place. So a user sets their play area to be the area that they have available, and then that gets transmitted to the game, where the game can customize an experience to that. So it's for a room scale game, it's between 2 by 1.5 meters and I think like 4 by 4 meters. Does that answer your question?
One of my questions.
Okay.
And if anyone else has questions, I don't want to, take over this whole thing, but
Yeah.
I have a lot. Does tracking calculation take place on the headset, or does that take resources away from your PC?
I think it's shared between both, but the amount of resources to do the tracking math is minuscule compared to the amount of math to render, at two eyes, 90 frames a second, high resolution.
Okay. And then, no one else? All right. Tracking spaces, are they limited to rectangular areas, or can they be odd shapes?
Your tracking space can be odd shapes, but the play area you set up is a rectangle to make it easy for developers to fit to that. So you could have like a really screwy, because we show walls, one of the big things about, with the Vive at least, is that we show walls when you get too close to bumping into stuff that you set yourself. And those can be any shape. The play area is something that's much more consistent and rectangular. Okay. So I'm going to try building this game again, and let's jump back. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and turn on our UI canvas. Has anybody used Unity's new UI system? So it's pretty awesome, yeah. And one of the cool things that you could do with it is that you can create a world space UI. And in VR, that's the only one you can use. And so in this case, I've created a really simple UI and just kind of stuck it in the environment. And here we're going to turn on our game state manager, which has all the logic that I wrote in advance. And we're going to, oh, please work, for the love of God. Is it working? Are you tracking? Are you good? Oh, yay. Okay, now we need game sound, because I have some really sweet sound effects in here. Let's try this one more time. Okay, so now you guys can actually start lining up for questions. If anybody else has questions, we can talk about that. What is going on? I think some cable is getting rapidly unplugged and plugged back in. Is it working? You pull the trigger. Huh. case it's not clear, this game is not balanced. Come on, Unity. Jump back to the presentation for a second, if that's okay. So one of the challenges of putting a UI in the environment is that it can be difficult to get users to look at it. If you've got a bunch of crazy stuff going on and there's like a little screen down here, they're going to be looking over here when the screen is doing stuff they might not notice. But fortunately, there's a couple ways to solve this. You can start thinking about your environment as being a giant life-size visual hierarchy. And so all the things you would use when designing a UI were, creating a hierarchy, creating, using styles to differentiate things, making it so it's not just a mess of information. This is true in 3D too. I mean, the example that we had was pretty simple of having just a giant screen ahead of you, but no one would not see that if they were playing that. And so you can use your environment and create like a virtual UI, basically. You can also attach UI widgets, the little panels and planes and stuff, attach them to the controllers and then vibrate the haptics to get the player's attention. This is something that a lot of games do. This is really easy to copy over if you're kind of porting something or trying to rely on not reinventing everything. So that you can put a more traditional UI like on a hand. You can have it so you select one with another one. You can do lots of cool stuff there. And that's the end of the actual talk part. So if you have any questions, you can email me. Yeah. So, we actually have time for Q&A, so that's cool.
So what's the current state of availability and, if applicable, the cost of the developer hardware to start making things like this?
So for the Vive specifically? It's not available currently for purchase, obviously. And then turn down the sound a little bit. Hopefully it's not too distracting. I believe if you email me, I can kind of direct you to the right people, and we are definitely still giving out developer hardware to developers, but I'm not really in the loop with who gets them and how that works.
Will it be like Oculus, where it gets to a point where there are just like kits that can be ordered by developers without?
So there are kits. I mean, like this is a development kit, and they have been distributed to some developers. We're in the process of still developing them. So you should email me, and I can hook you up with the right contact.
Gradually rolling out.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm Derek from Architect. Just wondering about the Lighthouse technology. I keep hearing it's going to be open source or something. Is that still the case, or?
I have no idea. So I'm on the content side of things on SteamVR, so I actually don't know a lot about the plans for hardware and like licensing and how that would work. But if you email me, I can find someone who can help you with that.
All right, thanks.
So, yeah.
I have rather a specific question. I'm blind in one eye, so is there any way I can save half of my rendering cycle by just disabling the other viewport? I mean, where is the support for cyclopses like me?
That's probably a question for the developers. I have a little checkbox for that. Yeah. Oh, I can repeat the question. So what's the greatest challenge of VR? And you mean designing games in VR? Honestly, the movement challenge is a really big one. And traditionally, as I'm a game designer, we're used to being able to just create a giant environment. And the conventions for moving around in that, WASD and a mouse and PC, super widespread, everybody understands, it works really well. On VR, it does not work. And you'd think that you could kind of just, do some tricks and slide around. And no, people get really, really motion sick. And it's not like the kind of like, oh, you're just you're a weak-willed person kind of motion sickness. No, it's like, you're going to be physically unwell for the rest of the day because the guy who designed this was an idiot. And they're really, like, there's no direct, like, simple solution, So obviously I was talking about the gallery, the idea of blinking where, I'm in a bubble right here, I can look over there, and it actually moves my bubble in the game world over there so that suddenly the world is over here, and then I can continue exploring in my smaller bubble. But like that kind of, one thing I've noticed is that people, when they're playing a game that lets them just really, whatever. So we're talking now, we don't need this. So one of the things I've noticed is that if you give people the ability to quickly and rapidly and repeatedly teleport, they kind of just stand still. And so even if they're in this like 4x4 meter square, they're just teleporting around and standing still. And I think that's one of the downsides of like aggressive teleporting. But you could also maybe meter that, let people use it like once every second and not in combat, and that would change it a little bit. There's a lot of challenges there, and they're like the tough challenges, not like the, oh, this is challenging. Like, no, it's actually a challenge. But it's exciting because you can solve it with game design, and that's the best kind of challenge.
What is the recommended workflow in terms of architecture that you want to be used, and what will be supported in the future? Like, I don't want to go down, like, learn a lot of Unity in order to do VR development, only to find that a year or 2 years down the line, you're no longer doing the API or patching or stuff like that.
I think that's unlikely because it seems to be like somebody at work was telling me the other day that maybe everybody isn't giving Unity enough credit for sort of kicking off this VR thing. Is that Unity has made it really easy for a lot of people to build VR games and prototypes that probably wouldn't exist if they had to write all the OpenGL themselves and like do it the hard way. And so Unity is very popular, and that's probably not going away anytime soon. It's certainly right now great for, it's probably the easiest thing to learn, and it's a really effective way to prototype gameplay and stuff like that. And with VR, that's really important because everything you think is going to work in VR is not. So nothing against you. It's just very counterintuitive, and being able to quickly try things, Unity's great for that.
When is it coming out? All right, okay.
So I make content for it. I'm sorry. Yeah.
What are the prospects for trackable things like armbands, ankle bands, things that would expand the modality?
Yeah, it's definitely possible, but somebody, as with all hardware, somebody has to make it, and that tends to be the hard part. So I think initially, at least, you're going to see lots of kind of general purpose controllers, like the ones that come with the Vive, or kind of little wandy things, or Oculus has similar kind of smaller wandy things. Those are very good because they're general purpose. If this depends on, I guess, how it goes, you might see like a gun controller, I think is the thing that everybody wants, is like a two-handed linked gun controller with intense haptics and stuff like that. But that's up to hardware manufacturers. Mad Cats, I don't know. Are they still around? Is that still a thing? So, yeah, one more question. This is the last question.
When's Half-Life 3?
Oh, for the love of God. I was gonna thank you guys for not asking that. Here, one more question. It better not be you-know-what related. What was it? Oh, any plans for mobile? So like a Gear VR kind of thing? I have no idea. Sorry. Okay, we should probably wrap it up. So thank you, everyone.